Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bench Press Podcast. My name is Andrew, and I'm going to be introducing you to our topic for today's episode. Well, we are going to talk about Myanmar. As you may have heard from the news, Myanmar is currently in a difficult situation, having issues concerning freedom of speech and their democratic legitimacy being challenged. For such delicate issues, we are going to invite a very special guest for today. His name is Adhi Priamarizki. Adhi has a PhD degree from Rajaratnam University, and he has his research on the topic of human security in Southeast Asia, specifically on Indonesia, Thailand, and Myanmar. For that, I think we are going to be looking at the Myanmar issue, mainly from the perspective of human security and military. I think it's better for you guys to hear about Adhi, to hear about his research and his background from Adhi himself. So without further ado, welcome to today's episode. I hope it's an insightful one for you guys. So hi Adhi, welcome to the Bench Press Podcast.
Hello.
Thank you.
How are you doing? First of all,
Great, I'm great. How are you guys? It's been a while.
Doing great. It's been a while since we've last seen you at school. It's been like
What, 2 years?
2 years, right?
Yeah, almost 2 years. Yeah.
Jesus, you now have a. Is it a son or a daughter? A daughter, right?
Yeah, I have a daughter now recently. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
How's work and is everything okay with COVID?
Well, everything was okay. I'm in Singapore right now. We are in a phase 3 right now. We've been entering the new normal phase for now. So we now can travel. Within Singapore freely, but of course with a mask.
But they're still banning foreigners, right?
Yeah. Unless you have a permit to enter Singapore, then you can come to Singapore. Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's jump straight right into it. Yeah. As it was mentioned before in this episode, we are going to be talking about Myanmar. We're going to talk about the recent coup d'état, about the riot, and basically the basic of what you need to know about what's happening right now in Myanmar. And Adhi, I guess you can be considered somewhat of an expert of Southeast Asian military, I believe specifically for Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia. So can you maybe introduce yourself a little bit about your past research and how did you get so interested with, I guess, Myanmar and Thailand?
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. But first of all, I guess I need to say that I'm not an expert on Myanmar. So because mostly I'm doing research on civil military relations, and I did my PhD dissertation on civil military relations in Indonesia, Myanmar, and Thailand, and yeah, but doing three case studies made me also know a bit about Myanmar as well. But for now, I'm working as a visiting fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, and I'm mostly doing research on military modernizations, specifically Indonesian military modernizations, and also watching Indonesian politics as well. So yeah, it's interesting, right, to see what's happening in Myanmar.
It's surprising, I guess. It's very, very surprising. I did not expect for Myanmar to have such an interesting case, I guess. I guess, let's start with the first question. Yeah, what led to the military coup? What really started it? What made it, what jump started it?
Well, the military cited that Suu Kyi breached the health protocol, but of course we know that's that kind of a bit that's a weird reason. But then there's also this idea that the military rejected the last year's elections in which the NLD or Aung San Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy, won a landslide victory. The military rejected the election results, and with the detainment of Aung San Suu Kyi and many of the NLD leaders, it's practically halt the successions. And the thing is, now it's practically the military controls the government there by appointing some. I mean, like not some. I mean, like the whole new cabinets, in which many of these members of the cabinets also were member of the previous military junta back prior to 2015. I mean, like from 2015, the NLD at the time the NLD won the election in 2015. But before that, there was this quasi civilian government, which led by President Thein Sein under the party called the so-called USDP, the Union Solidarity Party, and then that party was actually a proxy of the Myanmar's military.
Okay.
Sorry, just to
Is that too
clarify.
specific?
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, the NLD is a National League for Democracy, right? That's that's Aung San Suu Kyi's party. Is that right?
So it's maybe it's very it's too specific. It's kind of like for like area studies people or area studies persons type of knowledge. But I'll try to be like maybe more.
It's okay. I mean, that I think that was very specific, and we can talk about it like for we can just like peel it like an onion, like just like a little bit, a bit and a bit.
Yeah, because there will be too many footnotes to explain.
Right.
Wait, so just to clarify, you mentioned two parties there, right? So one was the NLD, and the other one was?
It's the USDP.
Which stands for?
It stands for Union Solidarity and Development Party.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So I always kind of like a bit forget about the D. I always think about the D is democracy, but it's actually development.
Right. Yeah.
It's impossible that Myanmar military junta having democracy in party.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I have a question, Adi. So, this is not the first military coup that ever happened in Myanmar. I do believe that it was in 1962. There was also a military coup. And I just want to ask, what is the difference of the current coup to the 1962 military coup?
Actually, there were several coups. The first one was actually in 1958, prior to the 1962. So the leader at that time was General Ne Win, another authoritarian leader. So in 1958, the first coup, at that time there was this political turmoil, a battle between civilian politicians. At that time, UNO, of course, I think you guys must be familiar with that name, UNO. He invited the military to take over the government. To become a caretaker. That one was in 1958. And after the 1958 coup, the military actually returned the authority to the civilian government. But then there was this 1962 coup, in which the military took over the government, and it's practically they did not return the authority, and they created their own military junta government at the time. And they actually cited that there was this threat to the national unity. The military was very concerned about the unity of the country. And then there's also another element that triggered the military was actually how UNO wanted to bring religions to politics. At the time, if we see the political the political powers in Myanmar, we have three. We have the military, of course. and then we have the student movement, and then the third one we have the Sangha, or the Buddhist community, and these three being the three largest political blocs at the time. So of course, the military being the military, they have their own stance, but for the student movement, it's actually too fractured, and it's not organized. Well, it wasn't organized, but unlike the student movement, the Sangha was very organized and it's very institutionalized. And of course, it became a reasonable choice for UNU to have a to bring the Sangha into his political alliance. And the military actually really did not like the idea of inviting a religious group into the government, or bringing the religions to politics at the time. Yeah, because things change, and it's actually probably quite different from what's happening now, because in 1962 the military was actually have not established a strong control compared to now. I mean, if we see what happened prior to the transfer to the civilian government back in 2010-2011, the military junta actually had already set some foundations for their own style of democracy. They established this so-called 2008 constitutions, which become kind of like the core or the foundations of their political power right now. It actually guarantees, the first one is military autonomy, and then secondly, it's 25% of the seats in the parliament, in the upper and lower parliament, and then the third one is having the rights to nominate 3 ministers. It's border affairs, home affairs, and of course defense. And these three become the core of the so-called political power of the military. No civilian government can interrupt them. Why? Because if you want to revise or to amend the 2008 constitutions, you need 75% plus 1. It's almost impossible. I mean the NLD at that time, even after the 2020 election, they had more than 60%. I guess 64% of the total from the total seats. I mean, like, they need 11% more, and then there has to be one military officers move to the NLD side. So it's almost impossible to have that kind of scenario. But of course, yeah. So how's it? It's a bit complicated, right? It seems like the democracy, but it's actually no.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think like it started, they call it usually, I can like hear from like news, they call it like an experiment democracy. Because even though they let like LDP lead, the government or like the current, the Myanmar, the power is still in the military. As you said, there was the constitution. I do believe it was a 2008 constitution when they decided to give 25% of the seats to the military armed force. And they have also like a veto power, I do believe, if someone tries to change the constitution. So yeah, I think it's a bit, like they just show like, okay, we reached democracy, but on the background, it's still the military who has the power, right?
I mean, like, you have elections. I mean, how many times Myanmar already, like 2010, 2015, 2020, not to mention the by-elections that already happened a couple of times. But again, it's the civilians government has a very, very limited control over the country. There are certain areas that the civilian will never able to control any policy related to that areas, and it's very complicated. And one of the one of the issues actually that people try to guess. What are the reasons behind this coup? Was it just because of the military wants to retain its power? For this we have at least two potential explanations. The first one is about the corporate interest of the military. Corporate interest is related to the interest, the military interest that related to the survivability of the organizations. Prior to the 2020 election, the NLD had done several initiatives actually to discuss the potential amendment of the 2008 constitutions, and this is actually a threat to the military corporate interests, and that's one possible explanations. And not to mention that the NLD also tried to several times criticize the military business. If you know, the military has two big. The Burmese military has two big companies that basically run many economic activities. It's the MEC, Myanmar Economic Corporations, and the other one is the UME, Union Myanmar something. I forget what it stands for. And then the second reason is actually the personal interest of the Min Aung Hlaing. Min Aung Hlaing is now 64 years old, and one more year to his pensions. And people believe that he wanted something more than just the leader of the armed forces. Probably he wanted to become the leaders of Myanmar. But again, the thing is, the NLD is too strong at the moment, and then the USDP, the military's proxies, is too weak. The trend, the electoral trend, is decreasing from one election to another elections. So it's gonna be a headache for Min Aung Hlaing if he wants to run in the election.
So what you said just now, what you mentioned just now, was basically that democracy is not. It's like a facade.
Oh.
How do you? Right.
Maybe like quasi, something like that. Mm-hmm.
Is it related somewhat to the notion of disciplined democracy? I heard that you mentioned it several times in the previous podcast.
Yeah, it's actually a disciplined democracy. That's the idea of the kind of democracy that the military desires. A disciplined democracy. They crafted it since the 1990s, and they want to have a transition. They want to have a transition to democracy, but in a way that it's manageable. The military still holds the control, and it won't be a liberal democracy as what the West perceives. It's something like that. But again, it's very intriguing. I will not use the word interesting here, whereby you have elections, man. You have elections several times, but then it's not democracy. Then what is democracy?
Right. Okay, so Adi-san, all right, thank you very much for the explanation. So, speaking about the military, so, of course, what the military did with the coup d'etat, it sparked a lot of backlash from the civilians, right? But a few I think weeks ago, there was a video. I saw a video which supposedly shows the supporters of the military attacking the anti-military rioters. So that led me to wonder, who are the groups that support the military in Myanmar in this group? Are there any specific groups that support the military government?
Yeah, and then it's very messy that I really cannot answer that questions for now. We need I need further research for that questions. It's right. Because we really don't know who are these people actually. It suddenly came up. They came to the street and then become like another axis
Right.
during the demonstrations, showing that they have sympathy to the current government. And
There are some it's well, this is a theory, but there's some claiming that those are basically military personnel in disguise. Do you think that's likely as well?
well, we cannot. We cannot prove that, but we also cannot dismiss or deny that possibility, right? I mean, it happened in Indonesia. I mean, during the 1998, 1999. If you guys aware of the idea of Pam Swakarsa, please don't make me feel so old. I mean, like after the Indonesian reform at that time, every time there was these demonstrations, asking or demanding, pressuring for further military reform, there will be another demonstrations that actually back, maybe not back the military, but will take the opposite stance of those demonstrate. So there will be two kind of groups that demonstrating. They have two different views, two opposing views. So, but the other group seem a bit more violent than the other. So it's actually more or less the same scenarios. I mean, if you see in the news that these pro-military government sometimes they did some violence to other groups of demonstrants. Yeah, it's very messy, I will say. But again, I cannot dismiss. I cannot prove that this is all those people are from the military. But I also cannot dismiss the possibility that those people are connected to the military or to other political group.
Right. I think that's very interesting. So, like, the fact that it's very messy also means that we have to be careful as to what we see, so that we don't see things in a black and white manner, right?
Yeah, it's actually very it's a gray area, and the thing is about democracy in Myanmar itself. We may think that actually there is this kind of battle between the military and the civilian and so on. But we should also remember that actually the NLD, 4 or 5 NLD founders were military guys, man. So it's also interesting to see this fact. Maybe it also can help us enlighten us a bit why Suu Kyi sometimes a bit more pro-military in some areas. But possibly like in the case of some ethnic minorities, or maybe in facing some ethnic insurgents, the Suu Kyi seems very supportive towards the military's decisions. And probably the fact that the NLD founders, most of them were military guys, maybe can help us understand Suu Kyi's decisions, Suu Kyi's behavior. And so what do you think, guys? Do you feel like this kind of democracy might happen somewhere else? Like we are having, in general, people are talking about this rise of illiberal democracy across the world, across the globe. What's happening in Brazil, and then and many of these liberal democracy, they have kind of like challenge to the notions of the liberal democracy ideas, and it's probably will make it harder for Burmese to move to maybe to free from this kind of disciplined democracy, because it's surrounding also more or less experiencing, or maybe experience the same thing or the same challenge to their own democracy.
Speaking about democracy, I wanna get sidetracked a little bit, with the I guess civil military relations, which I think is Indonesia had quite a similar history with Myanmar, as in I think the nation, both nations gained their independence, and the military plays a very big role in assisting the nation to gain its independence. So in that sense, I can see how the military becomes a respectable force in each respective nation, and they often intervene with like civil matters. So, like, what makes our experience different from their experience? What makes our democracy more like, I guess, Western liberal?
Well, maybe how to put it, yeah. Maybe I will not say our Indonesia's democracy is more Western or more liberal, because in fact it's not that liberal actually. It's maybe more stable, I would say. More stable. Why? Because I mean, at least there are two reasons for this. First, it's the experience of the democracy itself. At that time, when Indonesia embraced democratizations, it did not happen, or it did not start from the elite. I mean, there was elite fractions at the time, surely, because of the power competition and so on. But the elites did not design the democracy, did not design Indonesia's democracy, did not design the transitions. Unlike Myanmar, the military elites at the time, the military junta, designed the democracy, designed or crafted disciplined democracy. So it's a big difference. That's one. And then secondly, there was the so-called military figures that actually more or less pro or supports the idea of democracy. In Indonesia case, we have at least 3 or 4 officers that actually support that idea, and those officers they had considerable authority or political power during the power transitions. So I would say Indonesia's former president Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and then former vice chief of parliament Agus Wijoyo. Those are the examples of these officers that support the idea of democratizations. But those type of officers were absent in the case of Myanmar. So these two reasons, have contributed significantly or created the difference between what happened in Myanmar and what happened in Indonesia. So yeah, it seems the same. It seems the same. I mean, both countries have military. Have strong military, I would say, and then that involved in politics, but actually they have different outcomes in terms of democratization.
Sorry, so while we're still on the topic, I was wondering, right, so my connection got cut off a bit early on, so I'm not sure if you already explained this or not, but I was wondering if Myanmar's disciplined democracy is in any way similar to Indonesia's guided democracy during the Sukarno era.
Yeah, interesting, Joe. I mean, you mentioned about guided democracy. No one have ever tried to compare that with guided democracy. Okay. It's actually when we talk about guided democracy, there was this one persona. There was this Sukarno that being the center of the democracy, that he is being the father, right? But not in the case of disciplined democracy. Disciplined democracy is kind of like try to prevent Myanmar's democracy, or whatever they call moving towards liberal democracy. But in the case of Indonesia's guided democracy, it's actually concentrated on Sukarno's figure. That's the big difference. although it's actually guided democracy itself. It's a very fake concept, and it really depended on Sukarno's interpretations at that time.
Yeah, I have a question, Adi. In terms of, you mentioned how in Indonesia there was a figure who really fight for democracy. Do you think this figure for Myanmar could be Aung San Suu Kyi, or should it be from a military officer or within the military armed force?
It should be from someone from the military, that actually, because you also need someone that you need when we talk about transitions. You need someone that you can communicate with. Is there someone within the Burmese military that can have the same idea, that have at least the same frequency, that someone that believes the idea of democracy, that can have discussions? Such thing, I believe, I'm not a Myanmar expert. It's still absent in the case of Myanmar. There was this guy that tried to move or try to force a close relations with pro democracy political figures. There was this General Kinyut, but Kinyut itself is not a very democratic person. He was part of the military junta, but then the Burmese military leadership kicked him out because he wasn't a team player. There was this accusations that actually he tried to forge a closer relations to the pro democracy political figure, not to establish a democracy, but only for his own political gain. So that's the problem right now. In the case, there was the so-called military maverick, I would say, one term that can describe this kind of military officers that have a novel idea or different idea that wants to change the situations.
Well, yeah, I was muted. My bad. Yeah, I think we get kind of sidetracked a little bit too much for the case of Indonesia, and I can see how it's very interesting to relate both countries, and obviously it's your research as well, right? But maybe let's go back to the Myanmar military, because I think there's a lot of interesting questions that we can ask. Let's see. Okay, so you talked about that there is an age limit for military personnel, and there's a possibly personal agenda for Min Aung Hlaing, who is right now 64, and it means that a new military figure or a head is going to be elected soon. Is that correct? Okay, so do you think that the new military head will reform the ideology to push for a new, more democratic, more liberalized approach, or do you think that it will stay the same?
I think it's unlikely if we see the promotion pattern in Myanmar. If we see the promotion pattern in Myanmar, many of these officers that being promoted, they were being part of the cliques of the larger military group. So it's part of the patronage system of the military. So Min Aung Hlaing, basically those people that being promoted to the higher rankings, they are mostly I would say docile. They follow orders carefully, and they did not show any antagonisms toward their supervisor, and of course most of them will be from the ethnic majority, and that's why they try to ensure this continuity within the armed forces. So there will be no higher ranking officers that having a very different idea with the other officers. And because the nature of the Tatmadaw elite itself, it's, if we can say, it's they adopt a power sharing system, whereby any officers that try to gain for their own, try to gain a maximum advantage, they will be kicked out from the circle. So that's very important here.
So it's kind of like getting rid of the past that would, in a way, destroy the whole system, that has been established here. Oh, interesting. Does it work everywhere, or is it like a Myanmar special case?
It varies from military to military. Yeah. In the case of Indonesia, it wasn't power sharing system. It based on at that time, during Suharto era, the authoritarian rule. It was based on Suharto's charisma. There was no power sharing system. Suharto controls everything. So this created some factions within the military that disappointed with the government, and then try to have a different, try to oppose the other elites at that time. So, but not in the case of Myanmar. It's a power sharing system, and then all those officers that being, I will say, that becoming a renegade, it will be kicked out. And then maybe I should mention a bit about the promotion pattern in Burmese military. I mean, of course, there was this study from Bong Ong Myo. He mentions about this promotion. He described this promotion pattern in Myanmar. First, of course, it should be from the ethnic majority. It's from Burman, and mostly you need to have a combat experience. I mean, fighting the insurgents, fighting in the rural area. That's gonna be a very good CV. I mean, it will make a good track record, and then it will make a strong or compelling reason or compelling justifications to promote you. And then, next, actually, you need to have a Burmese wife. I mean, like, not only a Burmese wife. I mean, if you are not Burmese, then you need to have a Burmese wife. And then, interestingly, you must have your wife must have a high degree, a high university degree. It could be masters, and it will be better if your wife is a doctor, a medical doctor. And many of these ladies, highly educated lady in Myanmar, mostly they are coming from elite family, or at least from rich family, and then it actually will ensure your I will say your social mobility, and becomes like one of the reasons, or one of the, I will say, stepping stone. It's very interesting. Like, that's a study from Bong Ong Myo about the promotion pattern within the Burmese armed forces.
Interesting. There was a pattern, huh? I think we're running out of time almost, right? We can transition to the topic of Aung San Suu Kyi. I think Joe has a question, yeah?
Right. So, sorry. Okay, so I was just wondering, since Aung San Suu Kyi is currently in house arrest, right? Or is she in house arrest? Is that what her status is? Yeah, right. And of course, those who are anti-military, they want her to be released, right? So, and I was just wondering, Aung San Suu Kyi lost a lot of international support due to the Rohingya issue several years ago, right? So thinking of that, I was just wondering if that event has any impact on the current situation in Myanmar.
Okay. Can you repeat? Sorry, Joe. I think I lost you. It's actually Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I lost my connections.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay, so Aung San Suu Kyi lost a lot of international support due to Rohingya issue several years ago. So I was just wondering if that issue had any impact on the current situation in Myanmar.
Okay. Yeah, probably there's an influence, but the significance of the influence, I don't think it's very significant because it's two different things right now. But again, this is gonna be a homework from Aung San Suu Kyi or whoever civilian leaders that may lead in the future. I mean, like when you embrace democracy, it's not only about having freedom for yourself, but also how do you manage freedom in your country. So it's very important, and the case of Rohingya becomes like invited or attracted a lot of criticisms about how you handle your governments. I mean, how you manage your democracy, how you manage your liberal. I mean, I don't want to say liberal democracy, but how you manage your human rights issue within your countries, and it's very complicated issue. I mean, for the Rohingya case, first of all, I mean, the Rohingya case, the fact that who are the Burmese people, I mean, who are Myanmar people, are still in debate. I mean, there was still a debate. There was still a debate that haven't concluded yet about the relations between Burman and non-Burman. I mean, Burman and ethnic minorities. I mean, not. And then comes the Rohingya case. The Rohingya itself is case. All those Rohingya people are not considered as part of the Burmese, Myanmar's ethnicities. Why? Because according they use this one act from during the I forget which kingdom that all those considered local ethnicity are those who come to Myanmar or residing in Myanmar before the Anglo-Burmese War, before the British and Myanmar war. But those are here residing after that. So most of them. So that's why many of these Burmese perceive them as a foreigner. And the military junta at the time, if I'm not mistaken, during in the late 1980s, they are using that term to coin who are Burmese people. So that's why many Burmese perceive the Rohingya people as foreigners. So if they haven't settled this debate, it's gonna be difficult to find solutions for the Rohingya, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we're running out of time. Let me just ask a quick question in terms of like international actors or like, I mean, outside actors within Myanmar. So do you think what is the role of the international community? At the same time, what is the role of ASEAN in helping out in the issue in Myanmar?
Okay. Yeah. It's a bit difficult for ASEAN right now because ASEAN has this non-interference policy in Myanmar, and the thing is, if you did, I mean, if you really wanted to settle this issue of Myanmar, then you must have consistency. Then you must also have the same stance against Thailand. What is the difference between the Myanmar's coup and then the previous Thai military coup back in 2014? Even let's see, it's gonna be a test actually for ASEAN, whether ASEAN can be an actor, a real regional actor that can do something, or is it gonna be a very limited? I mean, or do the actions is gonna be very limited because of the non-interference principle? Or maybe we could see there could be another solutions to I mean, or another new mechanisms how to deal with the pressing domestic situations like what's happening in Myanmar.
So we've talked about a lot of aspects. We've talked about the democracy side, the issue of the riot a little bit, the Aung San Suu Kyi and Min Aung Hlaing. I think I want to ask a very quick question to wrap this interview up, or this podcast, I guess this episode of the podcast. What do you think could make Myanmar's military either like stop the coup or maybe like release Aung San Suu Kyi? And what do you think is the future prospect of Myanmar's civil-military relations?
Wow, that's very tough questions, man. Like, well, I cannot give you a definite answer for that. Honestly, I mean, it's very hard to see what will happen or foresee what will happen next in Myanmar. But I will say we have. I could offer you some scenarios to answer your questions. I mean, the first scenario. I mean, if we say it's the most optimistic scenarios. I mean, like if the military really return the mandate to the civilian government, and well, it could happen when there was this deal between the government and the civilian side and the military. But then, if it's happening, then there will be a lot of adjustments or maybe a lot of clauses between the two. For example, probably there will be no more attempts to revise the 2008 constitutions. That's gonna be one possible answer for the one possible scenario. And then if we see if we think about like a bad scenario, of course the military will go on with the current government, and it's also possible, and this might prolong the current crisis. I mean, like the current demonstrations, they do the so-called civil disobedience. These demonstrants, they try to hurt the military's source of economy, try to basically prevented the countries from running. So it will give some kind like punishment for the military. But then the question is, how long does ordinary people can stand with these current situations? And I guess this is it's a very sad scenario. And then I will not dare to kind of like to say or to kind of like to predict what will happen next in Myanmar, because anything can happen. I mean, it's very hard, but I will say the future probably not that bright for civil-military relations in Myanmar, at least for the next few years, given the current coup.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. It was a very much a pleasure for us having you here. I know you're very busy with your schedule. We're very thankful for spending time with us and talking a bit about your specialty, I guess, right now. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Adhi.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye. Have a good weekend, guys.
Yes.
You too.
Yes, you too.
Have a good day. Well, that was an interesting interview. We would like to first of all thank Adhi for his time, his precious time. Thank you very much. And really, the interview personally brought me a lot of new perspectives on a lot of things on Myanmar, the case of Myanmar itself, the people of Myanmar, the current situation of Myanmar, democracy in general and how history plays a big part in shaping up the democracy, because I think based on our interview we can kind of all agree that democracy seems like a very encompassing term, but really it's a very broad term, right? It's very like different from countries to countries. Like democracy in Indonesia, like we mentioned before, maybe it's different from democracy in Myanmar. And yeah, Adi, I think, brought a lot of great, I guess, ideas about that. What do you think, Joe? About the interview, maybe?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the interview. I enjoyed talking to Adi. It was a very insightful interview as well. I especially liked the part about when I asked the part about Indonesia's guided democracy and Myanmar's disciplined democracy, because, well, again, I'm not too familiar with Myanmar politics. I think many of us are not familiar as well. So it was interesting to compare the politics of Myanmar with our own country, you know. And aside from that, I think one of the interesting things we can learn from this issue, I think it really shows how you can't just simply like take over a country, or you can't simply like take over, assume the position of a ruler just by coercion, right? Because you need to have the support from your people as well. Okay, a ruler doesn't exist without its people. The country doesn't exist without its people, right? So it's also related to, I guess, what we also a social contract. So, right, yeah, in order for you to become a legitimate ruler, you also need to have like the consent from the people to let you lead them, you know. Because they're basically delegating, or they're sacrificing some of their freedom in order for you to lead them, right? Yeah, so basically you need to pay attention to like the people. That's one of the things that I got from the interview.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of like freedom, I think it is the reason why it is important to be discussed, the issue of Myanmar, because the issue of Myanmar is another case of a country's people who has been denied of their basic human rights, such as their freedom to have an assembly and their freedom of expression. And every day, this people has been exposed to violence. Every day we've seen in the news how many people have died, how many people have been injured due to the current coup in Myanmar. And as we mentioned in our episode 0, I do believe, we mentioned how not everyone is really, has really the privilege to live in a peaceful community. And an example of that is the situation of the Myanmar people. And despite all these hardships that they're experiencing, the people still continue to fight for their freedom, which is really amazing because, like how you will only achieve peace if you want to desire for it, as what Joe mentioned. So as long as they desire it, it is not impossible, right?
True.
Yeah. Adding to that, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to mention you, Dika, because I mean, you seem to be very, very quiet about this, but I think from the interview itself, yeah, I do think that you can learn a lot, right?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah, one of the things that I learned, it could be like I learned that democracy can be very complicated and sensitive in a way, but one thing that I want to mention is where this protest is being done with a very peaceful way. Although the enforcement side, the police, the army side was kind of brutally and violently, but I think the youth kept their peace throughout the whole protest, and I think that is a really a mature thinking from them, because with that peaceful protest they can raise awareness. They can also they try to maintain there is no people getting harmed and so on. So I think what the most important thing that I can learn from the Myanmar thing is, first, just to be peaceful and not try to engage with the violent and the brutal side of the police.
Right. Speaking of the Myanmar youth, I actually had the opportunity to talk to some of them because I participated in some kind of seminar or a discussion forum, basically, and they invited some youth from Myanmar who are also, I guess, participating in the protest. And one of their current fears throughout this ordeal is that, first of all, they're afraid of returning to the Dark Ages. That's what they said, and freedom of information, the Dark Ages, and they're also afraid of being cut off from the rest of the world, because the military government can shut off their internet, and I believe they actually do that during nighttime. I'm not too sure. I need to confirm that information, but I do remember the Myanmar youth that I talked to telling me that that's one of their fears, is that they might be cut off from the rest of the world. Because the military government can cut off their internet, right? So I guess for us, one of the things that we can do to help our friends in Myanmar is that we can always try to spread awareness of this issue, because you know how news come and go, right? The media looks for an interesting story, highlights that, and if it's not interesting anymore, they leave it even though it's still happening, right? So I think one of the things that we can do is that we can try to ensure that as long as this issue is not done yet, we still need to talk about it, to spread awareness and to get people to be basically aware of what's happening in Myanmar. And I guess also if you have a couple of some cash to spare, then maybe you can donate to our friends in Myanmar as well, to basically support them. And yeah.
Just in addition to that, I think the youth of Myanmar showed us how to utilize your power, your voice, and I think it's a very good role model for all of us youth on how do we use our voice to speak out and to make things right. I think that's very important because we at the moment have a lot of outlets that we could use to voice our opinion, to voice what we know, what we believe in, what we believe is right. So the problem that we might encounter would be how to utilize it. But as long as you know how to properly use it, and if you know that your facts are right, then don't be afraid to voice out or to speak out, because you don't know that sometimes speaking out might help other people as well. So I think that's for me, what it is one of the good learning that we could get from the youth of Myanmar.
Well, I mean, the three of you brought very interesting point. The youth plays a really big part, right, in this whole, I guess, reform of Myanmar. I wouldn't say the reform, but movement, right, Myanmar. Social media continues to be a very large part. So like Joe said, maybe, do your part, share, donate if you have some spare cash money. And I mean, I guess that's about it. I do hope that you learn a lot from this episode of this podcast.
Thank you very much for tuning in.
Speaking about sharing awareness, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
But I mean, that's about it, right, for this episode.
I mean, I guess since we're talking about Myanmar, we're also spreading awareness. So if you share this, I guess that counts as spreading awareness of this issue.
Oh my god, that's true.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I hope you learn from us as well.
Yep.
All right.
And stay tuned for the next episode.
And
See
see
you
you
for the next
tomorrow.
episode.
Tomorrow.
Wait, is it tomorrow or next
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Kazu.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I guess. Peace out.
That's
out.
out.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Peace
Peace
out.
out.
Bye bye.
See you.
See ya.